And I think we are good to go here. Okay. Hello, and welcome to my top 50 albums of 2018 list here, where I'm going to be going through all my favorite albums that came out in 2018. I'm going to kind of quickly go through the first bit of the list, and I'm going to go into more detail as I kind of go further down. So, here we go. So starting at number 50 is going to be the new Cat Power album, Wanderer, which is one of my favorite singer-songwriter albums of the year. I think it's a really great record. Number 49 is the new Tomb Mold album, Manor of Infinite Forms, which is just some of my favorite death metal of the year. Really love this album. Number 48 is an album that kind of took me by surprise because I hadn't really been a fan of this guy's music up until the release of this album. And that's actually going to be the new Post Malone record, Beerbongs and Bentleys, his second album. Yeah, I gotta hand it to him. He really improved his sound a lot here. His singing and his sort of sense of melody had improved drastically from his last album, and there are just a lot of great pop rap songs on this album that I love. Number 47 is the new Playboi Carti album, Die Lit, easily one of the most standout trap albums of the year. And number 46 is the new First Aid Kit album, Ruins. Number 45 is the new Horrendous album, Idol, which is just easily some of the most thrilling and exciting technical death metal to come out this year. Number 44 is probably one of my favorite albums to come from like the mainstream this year, and that is the new Ariana Grande album, Sweetener. Yeah, another album I really didn't expect to be as good as it was. But all the singles were great. Ariana's vocals for nearly the entire project are just like on point. And the beats, for the most part, are really engaging as well. Pharrell Williams handles a lot of the production here, and he does a great job, as always. Number 43 is the new Beach House album, 7, one of their best albums in a little while. A very pretty, delicate, and serene piece of dream pop. Number 42, the new Rico Nasty album, Nasty. Yeah, this album is really a load of fun, and for me, it solidifies Rico Nasty as one of the most exciting, charismatic, and like extremely energetic up-and-coming figures in rap music right now. Really excited to see what she's going to be doing in the future. Number 41 is the new Florence and the Machine album, High as Hope, which is just one of the most like rousing and passionately delivered pop albums of the year. Just great vocals, great songs, great album. At number 40, the beloved California boy band Brockhampton make their major label debut with Iridescence, which is one of the best experimental rap records of the year, one of the most emotional rap albums of the year. That was really born from a lot of turmoil in the group, but they really came out very strong on the other side in a pretty remarkable way. Number 39 is a dance rock album that is just as delightfully cheesy as it is incredibly catchy. The new Franz Ferdinand album, Always Ascending, really fun album. Next at 38, I actually have the recently discovered and newly reissued set of live recordings of Prince on the Piano and a Microphone 1983 album. Not only is Piano and a Microphone a uniquely raw and fantastically performed set of piano songs from one of pop music's most classic voices, but it's also an extremely intriguing look into like the mind of a musical genius in his prime. That's a really great, compelling listen. Number 37, yeah, I guess it's my guilty pleasure of the year, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't think this album was a ton of fun. That's the new Muse album, Simulation Theory. Yeah, it's extremely cheesy. Yeah, it's extremely gaudy. But this album just has way too many extremely catchy alt-rock and pop-rock songs for me to deny it. At number 36, I have the new 98-minute like epic double album from Lupe Fiasco, one of my favorite rap albums of the year. And at number 35, I have the new Vane album, Error Zone. This album features some incredibly crushing, heavy, yet extremely creative metalcore production, fantastic performances, and I love the kind of experimental edge this album has. Definitely makes it kind of stand out from the metalcore crowd. definitely one of the more interesting debut albums of the year, and one of the better metal records as well. Number 34, I have the new John Prine album, The Tree of Forgiveness, which is just one of the most warm and just delightfully charming pieces of Americana to come out in 2018 from a true Americana veteran. Number 33, I have the new Earl Sweatshirt album titled Some Rap Songs, which is just one of the darkest, most abstract and strange yet most artful hip-hop albums to come out this year. And at 32, I have another really great rap album, the new Denzel Curry album, Taboo. Probably my favorite album of his so far. He really shows off his versatility and artistic ambition in ways that we haven't seen him in the past. At number 31, I have the new Skeleton Witch album, Devouring Radiant Light. Skeleton Witch are, or I guess were, a thrash metal band until this album, where they successfully not only changed vocalists, but transitioned to a more black metal and atmospheric influence sound while still keeping their kind of thrash roots, resulting in my opinion, one of the year's best metal albums. At number 30, I have the new re-recorded, reissued, face-to-face version of Car Seat Headrest's Twin Fantasy, which is just a really great and really kind of epic in scope indie rock album. It really just has everything a great indie rock album should have. It's got lyrics that toe the line between hilarious and heartbreaking. It's got fantastically raw and unruly yet extremely catchy instrumentation, and just ample passion, not to mention Will Toledo's fantastic songwriting. He really is, in my opinion, one of the better songwriters in indie music at the moment. And all the best elements of his songwriting really shine on Twin Fantasy, especially when he drags out these songs to very just like massive lengths while still keeping them interesting and engaging. Number 29 is an album I was originally kind of so-so on, mostly because the vocal production struck me as being very weird and not really fitting the music on this album. But eventually I came to love it and really appreciate this album. I'm talking about the new One O Tricks Point Never project, Age Of, which is easily one of my favorite electronic albums of the year. It's really his Baroque-influenced experimental opus. Even when he's not operating at his best, he's still creating some of the most interesting and sort of hard to pin down electronic music out there right now. Number 28 is actually one of my favorite rock albums of the year, the new Nine Inch Nails album, Bad Witch, which is just such a, fantastic return to form for Trent Reznor. His industrial sound really roars back to life like it hasn't in some time on this album, with just so many fantastic tracks, incredible, thick production that is very hard to listen very closely to because of how abrasive it often is. You know, but that's just Trent Reznor, and yeah, Bad Witch, great album. Number 27 is one of the most soulful, low-key, and subtle rap albums of the year, the new No Name album, Room 25. Number 26 is the new Behemoth record, I Loved You at Your Darkest. Behemoth are an amazing blackened death metal band, and really their last album, The Satanist, was like a masterpiece, a very difficult album to follow up. But Behemoth really did a bang-up job on this new album. It takes that sort of more grandiose style of blackened death metal they were presenting on that album, but sort of streamlines it a bit more, trims some of the fat, and while it isn't as glorious as that album, it is still a very fantastic, super well written and performed metal record, and one of the better ones of the year. Alright, so we're at the midway point of the list, getting into the top half, starting off with another really awesome metal album, the new Yob album, Our Raw Heart, which is just one of the most epic and righteous collection of doom metal and stoner metal songs I've heard this year. Yob are just experts of drawing their songs out to such incredible lengths, but filling them with such thick and heavy riffs, as well as fantastic vocal performances. Really, some of my favorite singing on any metal record this year appears on this album. Number 24 is the new Mid-Air Thief album, Crumbling, which is just one of the most, sublimely produced pieces of dream pop I've heard this year. Number 23 is another very pretty album, the new and possibly final, I hope not, because I really love this band, Spiritualized album, And Nothing Hurt. This is easily one of the most peaceful, tranquil, and lullaby-esque albums in the entire Spiritualized catalog. Jason Pierce still shows that he's a great songwriter even this far into his career, and the classic Spiritualized combination of rock music and light noise rock with soul music has never sounded this just in love with everything around it as it does on this album. This is such a warm, lovey-dovey album, and while it is maybe a little cheesy, it's just so nice. It's such a nice album. Number 22, one of the most critically acclaimed breakthrough albums of the year, and I am not here to contest that opinion. The new Rosalia album, El Mal Querer, which is easily one of the most gorgeous and extremely dynamic and cutting-edge pop albums I've heard this year, regardless of genre or style. It's just a fantastic blending of old and new styles of Spanish music, just fantastic, classy flamenco pop with some amazing vocals. Like, Rosalia, if nothing else, is an extremely talented singer. Number 21 is actually my favorite covers album of the year, the new Angelique Kidjo reimagining of the Talking Heads' classic 1980 album, Remain in Light. Now, that album, Remain in Light, is easily one of the most celebrated and beloved albums in all of art rock. It's still a fantastic record that combines elements of post-punk and Afrobeat and electronic music and ambience. And what Angelique and her band does on this album is they kind of dim the electronics and sort of up the Afrobeat, because that is such a prominent part of her sound. This major change, combined with some fantastic performances, not just from Angelique vocally, but from her band as well, results in an extremely unique, interesting, vibrant, and really fun take on a familiar classic that shouldn't go missed this year by any big Talking Heads fans. At number 20, I have what is, in my opinion, one of the most introspective and lyrically vivid rap albums of the year, the new Saba record, Care For Me. Just really beautiful, subtle album. And at number 19, I have one of my favorite metal albums of the year, the new Tribulation album, Down Below. Down Below is just this fantastically catchy, atmospheric, and enthralling piece of gothic heavy metal that I couldn't stop returning to this year. At number 18 is easily one of the best pop albums of the year, the new Janelle Monáe record, Dirty Computer, which is one of the most sublime, conscious pop albums I've heard this year. It contains some of Janelle Monáe's most instantly gratifying and catchy material to date. The singles are fantastic. Make Me Feel is one of the best songs of the year. Amazing Prince influence all over this album that I'm just eating up. Number 17, another one of my favorite debut albums of the year, and I guess probably my favorite country album of the year, the new Caitlin Smith album, Starfire. This is just a absolutely fantastic piece of pop country with some of my favorite singing of the year, regardless of genre. Caitlin Smith's voice and sense of melody is just utterly stupefying. The choruses on this album pop like nothing else I've heard this year. Like, I just can't help but belt along with songs like the title track and East Side Restaurant. It's just like, you won't put out this starfire. I've gone and I've made a fool out of myself, but I don't care because this is a great album. Number 16 is an album I am extremely happy to have on my list because I'm a little bit confused by its existence and like how it's in 2018. I'm talking about the new Judas Priest album, Firepower. Judas Priest are a band who've been making music for 50 years. They're just one of the most classic acts in all of heavy metal. This album is a lot better than albums most 50-year-old bands are making. The production is fantastic and retro, the performances and the songwriting and the riffs are all there. Despite how long this album is, it is extremely consistent. And I really just need to shout out Rob Halford. My God, one of the best frontmen in the history of rock and metal. The dude is 66, and he's never sounded better. His vocal performances are on point, powerful, commanding, and just like for the entire album. Number 15 is one of my favorite rap albums of the year, one of my favorite concept albums of the year, the new Hermit and the Recluse album, Orpheus versus the Sirens. Hermit and the Recluse is a duo comprised of the rapper Ka and the producer Animos. They really come together on this album with an amazingly entertaining and supremely well-executed concept. Lyrically, this is easily one of the densest rap albums of the year. Ka's verses are so loaded with these incredible metaphors, really for the whole album. He uses Greek myths and Greek mythology to parallel his upbringing and street life in really fascinating and shockingly well-executed ways. And on Animos's end, he just assembles one of the most heavenly instrumental palettes I've heard on any rap album this year that really fit the kind of dusty, archaic nature of the lyrics. Again, these two come together really cohesively on this album, resulting in one of the best projects of the year. Number 14 is one of my favorites from the beginning of this year. It is one of the many albums Ty Segall released this year, Freedom's Goblin. Ty Segall, incredibly prolific garage rocker, and this is arguably his most ambitious album to date. This album is over 70 minutes long, incredible double album of just unruly garage rock, gorgeous ballads, fantastic punk jazz in the second half that I love to death. And this album, for as long as it is, and for as much music as Ty releases, this album is surprisingly consistent. There are so many great songs I can pull out of here, like the cover of Hot Chocolate's Everyone's a Winner, or the opener Fanny Dog, or the song She, which is amazing. This album is just such a joy to navigate. There's so many styles of rock music colliding together in such joyful and unpredictable, chaotic ways that it really does make for one of the most enjoyable rock projects of the year, in my opinion. Number 13 is another fantastic rock album, the new Void's album, Virtue. This is easily one of the strangest, weirdest, but at the same time catchiest art rock and alternative rock albums I've heard this year. At number 12, I have the new Clarence Clarity album, Think Piece, one of my favorite pop albums of the entire year. And Clarence Clarity's production style is this amazing combination of like 80s style pop music and even some glam rock influence on this album here, but it's combined with these super quirky and crazy electronic freakouts that could only come from an album made in 2018. These styles come together really fantastically, and also the vocal melodies on this album are just like so catchy. Like really some of the catchiest choruses I've heard this year. Make me feel like I make you feel good. Yeah, really enjoyable, unpredictable, strange, but at the same time extremely catchy pop album. The next pick kind of pains me because it's an album that totally deserves to be in the top 10, but there were only so many spots and there was so much good music this year that something had to get the boot. It doesn't change how excellent this album is. I'm talking about the new Sleep album, The Sciences. Easily my favorite metal album of the entire year, easily my most listened to metal album of the year. I couldn't put this thing down. But also probably one of the better comeback records of the decade, because it's been like 15 years between Sleep albums. I mean, to come back after 15 years, like, and make an album this good, to say these guys haven't skipped a beat would be an egregious understatement, because they're back and better than ever in quite a few ways. Everything that's so good about Sleep and their classic stoner metal sound is here in spades. The incredibly thick, driving, muscular riffs and drumming, but this is combined with not only a noticeable increase in versatility, but also easily their best recording and production to date. The recording is fantastic on this album, much better than any previous Sleep album, without being too clean. It still keeps that rawness and that heaviness and that physicality that one would hope for in a metal album, in a Sleep album. So yeah, really amazing album that I can't recommend enough. I think it's awesome. Yeah. And now We are in the top 10. My top 10 favorite albums of 2018. Here we go. Number 10. God, this is such a good record. One of my favorite rock albums of the year, the new Ice Age album, Beyondless. Ice Age, Danish post-punk outfit. They really continue to be one of my favorite rock bands working right now. And while this album, you know, it is noticeably less intense and emotionally traumatic than previous Ice Age albums, but the band more than make up for this, I guess, loss of intensity by making this easily their most catchy, accessible, and arguably replayable album to date. The songs on here pop, the choruses on this album bang, and the band really assembles such a variety of influences, not just the obvious 70s and 80s post-punk that they incorporate into their sound, but also some fantastic goth rock influence, as well as country, like on the song Thieves Like Us, which is this hilariously badass country rock song that is just all over the place, as well as the song Showtime, which is almost like this hijacked show tune that the band like take over and make chaotic and unruly. But anyway, I could talk forever about every track on this album and how great they are. But we don't have time for that, so I gotta move on. Anyway, Beyondless, great album. Please listen to it. Please listen to this band. Number 9 is a bit of a weird pick for me because it comes from an artist that I did not care for until this album. I really never expected them to make an album I would like all the way through, much less an album that would crack my top 10. It's in my number 9 spot. But yeah, I gotta hand it to them. The new 21 Pilots album, Trench. This album's awesome. This is easily one of my favorite pop albums of the year, one of my most listened albums of the year. On Trench, 21 Pilots mature in such a fantastic way. Their songwriting and their song topics are so much more well-defined. Their choruses pop so much more, and their production is so much cleaner, so much more varied, but so much more holistic and cohesive. And really, it's not like 21 Pilots have overhauled their sound on this album or anything. It's just the changes that they have made all the difference. I've always kind of appreciated them from afar because I do think, especially for such a mainstream group, they exist at a very interesting crossroads of genres. You know, indie music, pop rock, even some hip-hop makes its way into their songs. But all of these influences come together in so much of a more compelling way on Trench, from like the booming bass line and incredible drumming and fantastic structure of songs like Jumpsuit, or on the amazing multifaceted Chlorine, which might be my favorite song on the whole album, or on the amazing toned down but extremely personal piano ballad Neon Gravestones. There are very few risks the band take on this album that don't go over swimmingly. I really love just about every single song on here. And not only is the music on Trench so much better than what 21 Pilots have offered up until this point, in my opinion, but I feel like their message and the more anthemic moments on this album, the moments that seek to kind of lift up the listener and sort of combat sadness and depression, really come across in a much more earnest and therefore effective way than they have on previous 21 Pilots albums. While there are still some motivational lyrical cliches here and there, songs like The Hype just pack so much more of a, like, overwhelmingly earnest punch for me than the previous anthemic 21 Pilots songs. And that's just another reason why I think this album's great, and I really, really recommend it. So yeah, 21 Pilots, Trench, they did a good job. They did a good job. Now, number 8 is an album that comes from essentially one of my favorite rappers of all time. The new Pusha T album, Daytona. Yeah, it's no secret Pusha T has had an amazing 2018. Not only did he come out on the winning side of a rap beef with the biggest artist on the planet, but he also released his most popular, most critically acclaimed, and in my opinion, easily his best solo album to date in Daytona. At just 7 tracks and 21 minutes, few albums in 2018 really define the term all killer no filler like Daytona did. Track for track for track, Pusha T's rapping is fantastic, his mid-paced flow and just cutting performances are absolutely malevolent, and the bulk of the production on this thing is handled by Kanye West. He really delivers, I guess, the most quintessentially Kanye group of instrumentals he has in a while. Just great soul samples, knocking drums that add a lot of fire to these songs, but still leave enough room for Pusha T to kind of do his thing. And this sort of harmony leads to moments of just fantastic drug rap supremacy, like on songs like The Games We Play or the chilling Santeria. Daytona is essentially one of the most cutthroat, like no-frills rap albums of the decade, and I love it to death. My number 7 pick is probably going to be one of the stranger picks on my list, because a lot of people really hate this album, but I mean, I thought it was great, and I'm going to make a case for it. Maybe I'm just biased towards this artist because he is one of my favorite songwriters of all time, or maybe I'm just an idiot, but either way, my number 7 pick is going to be the new Jack White album, Boarding House Reach. Sue me. Jack White is an artist where, you know, typically you know what you're getting into when you listen to a Jack White album. You're going to hear some garage rock and some blues rock, so understandably fans were a little jarred when Boarding House Reach came out, and it was just, he's just gone. Sure, those elements of very fantastic guitar-driven blues and garage rock are there, but they're just held together by this extremely unruly and abstract patchwork of electronics and hip-hop and country music and soul music and electro-funk. There's even a classical cover on here, the closer Humoresque, which is one of the most beautiful album closers of the year, but you get how all over the place this album feels. And this album received a lot of criticism for being, you know, overly obtuse, but I do think this album not only contains fantastic songs and some of the most creative material of Jack White's career, like songs like Corporation and Respect Commander, Hello, but also I feel like this album is Jack White looking out at the landscape of modern rock music and saying, well, this is boring. We need to do something different to spice the genre up before it's too late and it becomes sterile, like jazz. Not only is that backed up in the music, but also in a lot of the lyrics, like the verses on Ice Station Zebra are really interesting comments on creativity and the nature of creativity and the sort of trials and tribulations of being an artist, being expected to create something new. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people hate it. I understand why people hate it. It is a very weird, jarring, and out there album, especially for an artist as established and kind of predictable as Jack White. But, I mean, I think it's fantastic. I think it's awesome. I could not stop returning to this album, if not just to peel away all of the layers that it has. Yeah, really awesome rock album, in my opinion. Number 6 is an album that is not for the faint of heart, because it is easily the most terrifying listening experience I had in 2018. I'm talking about the new Daughters album, You Won't Get What You Want. Daughters are a noise rock band. This is their first album in like 8 years, and in my opinion, easily their best, as it is their most ambitious, longest, and most horrifying album to date. The production on this album is otherworldly. The drums are so loud as they're just knocking into your head over and over again. The guitar tone is disgusting. It feels like the guitarist is jamming needles in my ears. And the singing is filled with such genuine anguish and strife, and the lyrics are so dark yet poetic. I know all these descriptions make it sound like an extremely displeasurable listening experience, but believe me, there is a very real and potent catharsis about all this. For as extreme and punishing and pummeling as this album is, it is an undeniably extremely well-produced, like oiled and assembled album listening experience. The songwriting beneath this thick layer of noise is fantastic. The production is fantastic, easily some of the most compelling rock music I've heard this year. Not to mention the closer, Guest House, is the scariest song ever. It's hard for it to not have a profound effect on the listener. It's like an anxiety attack, but it's sound. So yeah, that album isn't for everyone. It'd be dumb to say it is, but if anything I said sounds interesting to you, please check it out, because it is a very cool record. Number 5 in the top 5! So number 5 is another very unsettling album, but whereas Daughters use their atmosphere to induce pure terror, this next album actually finds a lot of beauty in its darkness. I'm talking about the new Anna von Hauswolf album, Dead Magic. On her new album, Anna von Hauswolf combines elements of dark wave with some ambient music and organ music and just experimental rock to create this fantastic, patient, and utterly beautiful and textured musical opus. This is, like I said, an extremely dark record, but at the same time, a breathtaking, like awe-inspiringly beautiful listen. I can see how some would find this album to be boring. It is an album that does really take its time, but for me, when it arrives, it really arrives like nothing else I've heard this year. It's easily one of the most enthralling, immersive, and utterly gorgeous albums I've heard this year. For as dark as it is gorgeous. Number 4 is one of the most exceptional pop albums of the year, the new US Girls album, In a Poem Unlimited. This is an album where I don't really feel as much of a need to justify my thoughts on it, because everything that makes it so awesome is like so right there on the surface. I love the fantastic political lyrics. I love the incredible grooves on this album. This is such a groovy, catchy pop record. All of the hooks absolutely land. The Cyndi Lauper-esque yelpy lead vocals are fantastic. I also love the backing band that's assembled for most of the tracks on this album. They add a lot of color, character, and really just energy to this album, especially on cuts like Time, where they really get some room to get into these awesome pop jazz jams that I just never want to end. So yeah, just extremely catchy songwriting, fantastic sharp lyrics, great performances across the board, makes for easily one of the best albums of the year, in my opinion. Number 3 is easily my favorite rock album of the year, the new Idols album, Joy as an Act of Resistance. God, so Idols are a band that in 2017 released their debut album, The Incredible Brutalism. It was an album that actually made my top 15 that year. I was super excited to see what these guys would do next, but I did not expect their follow-up to be this amazing. Joy as an Act of Resistance takes everything that made Brutalism so fun, so hilarious, so like in-your-face, punk furious. The fantastic performances, the super witty, often hilarious political commentary, the amazing vocals that are so British, and it expands them on a stage that is so much more ambitious and varied. They really drag their sound out in really interesting ways on some of the cuts here, like Colossus, amazing song. But at the same time, they still keep that incredible focus and just fury that made Brutalism so thrilling. The song topics are sharp as hell. Immigration on Danny Delco, Brexit on Great, and toxic masculinity on a lot of the cuts here, like Samaritans and Never Fight a Man with a Perm. It's an album that just gets me going, like so few albums did this year. It's such a fun, energetic, just amped up and joyful listen. And that's another thing about this album, is it's so aggressively positive in a way that I absolutely love. It's rare that you hear punk music in this style that is promoting self-love in such an outward way. It just makes me go like, "Ugh!" I think that sentiment is probably best summed up in the lyric, "If someone talked to you the way you do to you, I'd put their teeth through. Love yourself." Oh yeah, it's an amazing record. Now on to number 2, the debut album from Scottish super producer Sophie, Oil of Every Pearl's on Insides. Sophie is an electronic music producer I've been watching for a little while. She's made herself known through her affiliation with the PC Music Camp and through some interesting collaborations with artists ranging from Vince Staples to Charlie XCX. Her beats have an incredibly distinct sound. They're characteristically metallic, plasticine, with lots of bass, a little abrasive, but at the same time they're remarkably sugary, colorful, and quirky. So I was excited to hear what Sophie would do in an album setting. And I did not expect Oil of Every Pearls on Insides, because this album takes Sophie's incredibly distinct sound, but applies it in so many unexpected and interesting musical scenarios. She combines her really distinct, colorful electronic production style with elements of art pop and industrial music and ambient music in really colorful, like, mind-blowing ways that it makes for an album that's unlike anything I've heard this year. And every song on here is so varied, from the depravity of Ponyboy to the pure bliss of Is It Cold in the Water, easily one of the most beautiful songs I've heard all year. Or Immaterial, this amazing, straightforward bubblegum pop banger with an incredible auto-tune solo in the interlude. Are you kidding me? You can't make this stuff up. It's like listening to this album, it feels like I'm in a spaceship, and with every new song I'm touching down on some alien planet, and I'm staying there for a few minutes before I'm shipped off to the next world, and each world is more destructive and beautiful and chaotic than the last. It's an absolutely mind-blowing experience to listen to. And even though I've heard this album so many times, it still manages to just mess with me every time I listen to it. It's really an amazing, amazing record. And now, I guess we're at number one. I mean, any other year, Sophie or Idols could have easily taken the number one spot on a list like this. But 2018 was not any other year, because 2018 saw the release of an album so just like, so transcendental and beautiful and psychedelic and cohesive and human that it really just dwarfed everything else I listened to this year. But I mean, enough beating around the bush, let's just get to it. It's Kids See Ghosts, self-titled. Oh my god! This album is amazing. Like, I mean, bear with me if I say absolutely nothing of substance about this album, because it is very hard for me to talk about this album and not just devolve into utter baby speech and just saying, I love it, I love it, I love it, over and over again. In a nutshell, Kanye West, Kid Cudi, they've been frequent musical collaborators for really a decade now, and they're two artists that have been particularly outspoken about their mental health issues. Cudi, in particular, driving theme throughout all of his solo work has been his struggle with depression and with drug abuse, and now Kanye on his more recent outputs, such as this year's Ye album. So given these similarities in their music, it's about time they made a proper collaborative album. But I never in my life expected it to be this amazing. Kids See Ghosts is just as brief as every other album Kanye has had his hands on this year. 7 tracks, only 23 minutes, yet it feels so much longer than all of the other 2018 Kanye projects, and not because it's boring. Hell no. It's because they are able to pack so much amazing content into these 23 minutes. It's so expansive. In just this brief time, Kanye and Cudi are able to cover so much sonic ground, ranging from experimental hip-hop to pop rap to alternative R&B to psychedelic rock. Are you kidding me? It's like their newfound inner peace has not only freed them up emotionally, but musically as well, because this is easily one of the most experimental, out there, strange and psychedelic projects either of them have worked on. All these varied influences and sounds and colors and styles and emotions come together in this epic, and while the music is absolutely incredible, I mean, I could talk for hours about the incredible scat solo that Kanye delivers on Feel the Love, or the jangling percussion on Fire, or the orgasmic vocal harmonies on Cuddy Montage, or just Reborn, which is just the best song. But what really sells this album, even more than the music, are the emotions. Cuddy and Kanye, despite how often emotional their music is, have never sounded this earnest and genuine and true to themselves, and truly transparent with their audience with what they're dealing with, and it results in some of their most compelling lyrical work and music to date. Kids See Ghosts is the sound of two very complicated men overcoming their personal demons and celebrating and creating art together. They bring out the absolute best in each other and come away with nothing short of a masterpiece and a truly incredible record that I will not forget for a very long time. And I guess on a much more personal note, it's really hard for me to put into words exactly how much Kids See Ghosts means to me and what it does for me, because even though I do think the music is exceptional, it really goes deeper than that for me. Like, I can't recall a time I've been this personally and deeply moved by a piece of art, at least at this point in my life. I guess maybe I'm rambling on now, but anyway. For that reason, and so many more, Kids See Ghosts is my runaway pick for Album of the Year. Like, it isn't even close. I just love this record so much. And that'll do it for my list. That's my top 50 favorite albums of 2018. I had a lot of fun making this list. I hope you maybe had some fun watching it. And yeah, that's gonna just about do it for this video. So if you made it to the end of the video, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.